All right, movie fans, we're back again. This Cinema Joes. I'm Casey, your host, here with Noah and Justin, who will be finishing their top 10 lists. I suppose it's more accurate to call me the moderator, although you guys don't need much moderating. Anyway, where was I?
Because
So
we're about to kill each other. We disagree so much. Oh.
yeah, you guys are not Republicans, so it's all right. Um, Sorry, politics don't belong in a movie blog. Anyway, what was I
Oh,
saying?
wait till you
So
get to my number five.
yes, we did the 10 through 6 and some honorable mentions in our last episode. You can check those out. We're here to finish off with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's how numbers work. And then we'll have some closing statements. And Casey will say some words as well because Casey loves speaking. All right, so to continue, let's go, Justin. Let's see, what was your number 5 favorite movie?
My number 5 movie of the year, and I apologize, I'm probably bringing up some movies that maybe not a lot of people have heard of. But this film is called Phoenix. It's a German film,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I really wanted to add, like, no, like, have you heard of this movie? Because this is a pretty amazing.
I saw it
And-
last year.
Oh, you did? Yeah, and it came out in Germany last year. It came out here in 2015.
But
which is
because of the fucking strange rules that the Academy has for the foreign language category, it was not eligible because it was not the quote unquote official German submission.
selection. Yeah, right.
Also,
right.
Victoria was disqualified because they speak too much English in it.
Yeah,
Apparently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, continue. Phoenix.
So yeah, Phoenix is it takes place in the days after World War II, and it follows a woman named Nellie. She is a survivor of the Holocaust, and specifically of Auschwitz. But she's actually been severely injured. I believe she was shot in the face.
I recall that she was burned.
Oh, was it that she? Okay, wow.
I'd have to see it again. It's been a year.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. But she undergoes she goes back to Berlin after the end of the war, and she gets facial reconstruction surgery to try to look like she did before the war. And also, she hopes to find her husband. Here's the thing, though. There's a distinct possibility, in fact, that her husband is the one who betrayed her to the Nazis. Because she is Jewish, and that's how she ended up in Auschwitz.
She was Jewish, and she was in hiding, and they found her.
Right, and it's possible that her husband's the one who betrayed her.
Yeah.
This movie is really fascinating to me. For one thing, I think one of the things it does really well is create this very personal story that's allegorical for like what Germany was going through in the aftermath of World War II. And the very strained relationship between German people and Jews who were returning. And the way it does this story is really fascinating because she goes to try to find her husband, but her husband doesn't recognize her. And it's the kind of film that keeps it open. Like, does he not recognize her because of her reconstruction surgery? Does he not recognize her because he doesn't want to deal with what he did? It really does keep these questions very open, and the film is very suspenseful, but it's also kind of funny because it deals in so much dramatic irony. Like, you have scenes where she's doing something that seems to recall, that he doesn't know that she's actually his wife. And she doesn't tell him because she wants to kind of live in this place, like pretend to be the woman that that hasn't been in Auschwitz. She wants to pretend to be who she was. And there's scenes where like you have her husband saying to her like, "Don't stop doing that. Like you're not actually her. Like it's getting too close for him," which is of course really funny because you know that it's actually her.
Yeah.
And so, as you might imagine, this film deals in a lot of like the awkward moments between like people reuniting after the war, and it has talking about like 45 years had a very devastating final scene. I think this film has a really like one of the best final scenes in a movie that I saw. that involves Nelly. She was a lounge singer, and involves her singing "Speak Low," and it just is really just done in a way that is really heartbreaking, and just just kind of leaves you with your with your jaw hanging open. I mean, that's the only way I can think to describe it. It's a really it plays out like it's only like 90 minutes long, and it just really gets into the political just dreck of Germany after the war, and does so in
nice use of a German word, by the way.
Oh yeah. But it does it by creating this very personal, intimate story that is heartbreaking, but also very honest and ultimately devastating. So that's my number 5. Phoenix.
I'm so happy to hear that you have it on the list, because it is a great movie. I just sent you the review that I wrote when I saw it. I had it on my list of films for 2014. I went back and checked. I couldn't quite fit it into my top 10 list that year. I still stand by the films that I had on my list for that year. But it is a great movie, and I've been happy to see it get a very positive reception as it started to come out internationally, because it is a great movie.
Yeah. The director is, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, the director is Christian Petzold, who does a really fine job.
I really want to see more of his movies. He's actually worked with Nina Hoss, who plays Nellie. Yes. She's been in a couple of his movies already, so at some point when I have the time, I do want to catch up on the work that both of those people have done in their careers.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to my number 5. My number 5 is, again, one of the big Oscar contending films, The Big Short by Adam McKay, which basically is the spiritual successor to Wolf of Wall Street, but with its specific focus being the housing bubble that, depending on your interpretation, either directly caused or was one of a few main causes of the the economic collapse and the recession of 2007 and 2008. And it specifically focuses on the true story of a couple of people in different parts of the country and in different situations who each saw the signs, realized what was going on, realized that there was going to be a crash at some point, but also had the expertise to profit off of it, specifically by basically betting on the housing market crashing. And setting up different financial schemes to make out like bandits should that happen, and of course it did. And they became fabulously wealthy, but of course, on the flip side, millions of people, tens of millions of people the world over, lost their homes, their jobs, their pensions, and any semblance of stability and security in their lives, and we are still dealing with the consequences of that to this day. See the fact that Donald Trump is still relevant to the presidential campaign, among many other after effects.
I wanted to see that movie because the trailers made it seem like they were do-gooders who were trying to prevent that crash from happening. Is that inaccurate?
Oh no. They are not. No, they're not do-gooders. Well, some of them see themselves as do-gooders. And they justify what they're doing by saying, well, these people are all a bunch of greedy bastards, and we're just going to kick them in the teeth and take their money for ourselves. But I think first off, of course, they all realize none of us are in a position to prevent this from happening. It's going to happen. Because as they explain, a lot of the factors that went into the housing bubble have been around for decades.
Right.
So there were decades of people feeding this monster. It was going to happen at that point. So on the one hand, they knew that there was no stopping it, and on the other hand, they're not necessarily good or nice people. Like Steve Carell's character in particular is just this big ball of anger and rage, and he's out just to get vengeance on the banks and the investment companies that sort of kicked him to the curb a while back.
He's so good.
I compare it to Wolf of Wall Street because it has that same. I've realized this year, and we'll see this with another film on my list. I am a bit of a sucker for films that are full of raw, unvarnished, righteous anger. And like Wolf of Wall Street, this is a film packed to the gills with righteous anger, but carried by this almost comic energy. Like it's like a manic comedy for most of the film, with the way it's edited, the way it's filmed, the way it cuts from one scene to another. A lot of the dialogue. Ryan Gosling is sort of a bank insider who also narrates the film. At a lot of the big events, he's fantastic and hilarious and satirical and a little bit racist, but you still can't help but laugh at all the things he says and does. So like Wolf of Wall Street, you get carried along by this energy, and it's a blast to experience the film. It breaks the fourth wall at sometimes. Like characters will break character. The actors will look at the camera and say, by the way, that part didn't happen, but what you're about to see actually did happen, so pay attention. They explained a lot of the difficult economic concepts by bringing celebrity cameos in who just walk on screen just for the purpose of explaining what a subprime mortgage is. For example, Selena Gomez has her own appearance, and they all fit into the atmosphere that the film creates. But at the same time, it doesn't let you escape the very terrible consequences of what happened. So again, like Wolf of Wall Street, it's a blast to experience it, but you feel hollow at the end, and you feel angry, and you feel frustrated that this sort of thing was allowed to happen. And as the film implies, there's nothing so far that's changed enough to keep it from happening again. So it's a remarkable film. It is an experience to watch, and it's also an incredibly, incredibly important film because the topics that it touches on affect everybody. But they're things that most people still to this day don't really understand.
Yeah. And it's also a lot of fun.
Exactly.
It doesn't feel like work.
Exactly. It's a fun way to learn about the economy.
Right. Even though what happened was really, terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like the one scene where two of the guys, they're able to sell the bonds that they wanted to sell to, put their scheme in order, and they're so happy they start dancing, and their mentor Brad Pitt just sort of looks at them and says, "What are you doing? Stop that!" He's like, "Why? We're happy. We pulled it off." He's like, "Yeah, if you're right, millions of people are going to get dumped in the shitter. So whatever you do, don't dance about this." He's like, "Congratulations, you're going to get rich, and millions of people are going to get fucked over. So I'm out."
Yeah.
Yep. So that's my number 5.
Excellent. Well, my number 4 is one that I know we'll probably see again. So I apologize for bringing it up so soon. But it is probably the best theatrical experience I had last year, and that is Mad Max Fury Road. This is an action film of the highest order. It's gotten a ton of praise. It deserves all the praise. I saw it 3 times in the theaters, which was partially because I wanted to, but also partially because I wanted to see it with other people.
Yeah.
And it was totally worth all those times.
I didn't even see Star Wars in theaters that much, and you know how much I love Star Wars.
Yeah. I know Noah, you'll probably get into more of it, but I just think it was just so refreshing to me to see a film and to really see that an action film could be this well directed, this well designed. It has fantastic, it's bursting with creativity and imagination in every frame. The action is chaotic, but never hard to follow. It just keeps surprising you in the best ways. It has, again, it has Charlize Theron giving, I think, one of the best action performances by an actress since maybe Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2. It's just a really.
There's a comparison.
Yeah, and some people have said this is some people who have liked the movie have said oh, it's really fun, but it's not really about anything. And I think it is about things, and I think it does. The reason why it works so well is because it has interesting characters that it mostly develops through action, and through I was talking about before with some other movies. It's a lot about body language. And that's true both with Max, played by Tom Hardy, and also with Charlize Theron, who I think the first moment we see her, we are learning about her. We're learning about just the way that she, the way that she sticks that steering wheel into her, into the dashboard, the way she looks into her rearview mirror. It's all this information just through images, and that's a really refreshing thing to say. And honestly, I had seen all the Mad Max movies before this one, and I did not realize that, like, I like a lot of those movies, particularly the last two. I'm not as big a fan of the first one, but this one to me just like blew them out of the water. It was just like, just really tight and impressive filmmaking for a guy who's like 70 years old and has been. And also I do want to say this is the same guy, George Miller, who brought us Happy Feet.
And Babe.
It's kind of amazing. And Babe, I think So it's a really incredible experience.
So you're saying he makes excellent movies, because everyone knows Happy Feet was like the best Penguin movie ever.
It's just so different. I would have never guessed. Like, it's kind of one of the weirdest filmographies of any director I've seen. Anyway, Mad Max Fury Road, that's my number 4. I'm sure we'll hear about it soon.
I'm going to hold back on commenting on this because we'll come back to Mad Max. For my number 4, continuing on the topic of raw, righteous, socio-political anger, my number 4 movie is the incredibly controversial latest film by Spike Lee, Chirac, which takes place in Chicago, but using the moniker of Chirac, which has its own history that I'm not informed enough to really fully opine on, but the idea is that because the murder rates in Chicago have in the worst of years resembled those of an active war zone, there are a number of people have referred to it as Chirac instead of Chicago. That's an incredibly basic explanation. If you want more information, you could research about it, because I'm not, like I said, I can't offer a fully informed opinion on that. But what it is the movie is essentially, he takes the story of the ancient Greek play of Lysistrata, which is about a play about how the wives of Athens and Sparta get together and scheme to stop the Peloponnesian War by refusing to have sex with their husbands until they sign a peace treaty. And they get all the women of both the city-states to come together, and the men's erections become so overwhelming and so incapacitating that they agree to a peace. And the Peloponnesian War ends. So he takes that core story, sets it in Chicago, with Athens and Sparta now being replaced by 2 gangs, the Spartans and the Trojans. And the girlfriend of I had to think for a second, the leader of the Trojans, played by Nick Cannon, his girlfriend, an actress named Teyonah, and I'm blanking on the last name now. Hang on a second.
Teyonah Parris.
Teyonah Parris decides to, after one particular shooting that leaves an innocent girl dead on the street, which happens all too often, she decides enough is enough, and she begins a modern-day version of the same story, getting all of the women, the girlfriends, the wives, and we learn even all the prostitutes and strippers to go on strike. That's the core of the story. But being a Spike Lee film, it refuses to stay there, and it jumps around an awful lot to touch on economic injustice, on class divide, and on every aspect in which racism still exists and still exerts an influence on our society. So there were a lot of people who, just after the trailer came out, refused to see this movie or rejected it on the grounds of, oh, that's absurd and ridiculous and sexist to claim, first off, to only address gang violence and not address other forms of racism, and also to suggest that it's all on women, and if women just stopped having sex, then we'd have peace. To those people, I say, first off, read the play, and second off, watch the movie, because you'll quickly realize that no one is spared. It is very much like The Big Short. It is an experience. It has this incredible energy in the way it's filmed and edited. It is a musical, with a lot of rap and soul and R&B numbers, all of which I believe were written for the film, and are all great original music. So it's part musical. It's also in the style of Lysistrata and other classic Greek plays. Almost the entire screenplay is written in verse and meter. So nearly all of the dialogue, even the spoken dialogue, rhymes. And is narrated by Samuel L. Jackson, who walks around the city wearing bright neon suits, and goes through in between the different sides of the conflict and basically lectures to the audience about the many different types of racial and economic injustice that contribute to cycles of violence, and how destructive those are on everyone, basically, on the old, on adults, and on children and on future generations. It is one of the most, it's one of the, like with a lot of the movies on this list, it's one of the most unique experiences that I've seen in years. To see a movie combine being this lyrical and being that musical, with also being basically a political polemic on the persistence of racism. And like I said, no one is spared. It is not a movie that's just about black on black violence. Everyone, black, white, Hispanic, whatever, everyone is touched, is addressed directly by this movie. And it also has, I'm trying to bring my thoughts together. This is one of those movies I could do like an hour-long commentary on. It also combines an incredible amount of literary and cinematic depth to it in terms of the number of references it makes, not only to the original source play that it takes its main story from, but to other aspects of Greek mythology. Oedipus is a character in the movie. It's filled with references to other films as well. Deliverance is given a very pointed reference in one scene, and in one of the best endings to a movie this year that I saw, the very end of the movie is a final monologue by Samuel L. Jackson given in front of a massive American flag, which is a clear homage and subversion of the famous scene from Patton, where Patton stands in front of a giant American flag and goes on about the glories of war. Here we get a different version of that scene from Samuel L. Jackson. It is, and again, like Big Short, but it's like Big Short, but it's even more frenetic. It's even more hyperactive. It's even rawer, and it's even angrier. And I was completely blown away by it. And also like The Big Short, I think it is I think it should be a must-see movie for everyone.
Great.
I'm going to cut it off there because otherwise we're going to be at this for another hour and I'm not going to stop.
All right. Well, that's one I still really want to see, in addition to some other ones. But I'm really excited to see that. So,
please let me know when you do.
Yes, I will. Moving on, my number 3 is a little film called Tangerine. This is a film from Sean Baker, and it's about transgender sex workers in Hollywood, California. Specifically, one of them, whose name is Cindy, who basically comes out of jail and finds out that her boyfriend, who may also be her fiance, has been cheating on her. And she makes it her mission to try to find the woman, because she herself is transgender, but she's heard that the person that her boyfriend has been cheating on her with is an actual woman, and she makes it her mission to try to find her. Yes, I'm sorry, that's totally politically incorrect.
Quote unquote, actual woman.
Right. I mean,
a real girl.
Let's say,
Like
cisgendered.
Yeah, that's it.
There we go. Yes, that's the word I'm looking for.
Oh, right.
And the film is just like, really, it was shot entirely on iPhones, but with professional equipment in addition to that. So it wasn't just like, they weren't just like running around the city holding their phones, for example. But they did film it all on iPhones, and it looks great. It really has this really awesome cinematography. True to the name of the film, there's a lot of orange used in this, but it's also kind of it takes place on Christmas Eve. And the film is very surprising because it draws a lot from traditional Christmas stories. In this tale about this woman trying to find the person who cheated on her with her, who cheated with the boyfriend.
That sounds a lot like Tokyo Godfathers.
It's
which
a
is
little bit
a Christmas movie about homeless people who find a baby.
Well, and here it's like there, yeah. So what I think makes this film so great is that it doesn't judge any of these characters. It just kind of lets them do the things they do, and they do some pretty, they do some things that aren't so nice. But I think we always know where they're coming from, and I think also it's not just so it is partially about these sex workers, Cindy and her friend Alexandria, but it's also about this cab driver who becomes part of the story. It's also about the woman who Cindy eventually does find. We learn a little bit about her, and I think what it does so well is it shows that all these people are misfits in some way. They all are misfits in different ways, but they're all looking for some kind of home. They're looking for somewhere where they are, where they can really be themselves. And that's something that I think the film deals with gracefully. It's a very funny movie. It has some sequences toward the end where it basically turns into a screwball comedy that were just so incredibly delightful and really, I think, dug into like each person having their own motive and those motives clashing in a way that was really fascinating. Particularly when people would say things to others that are very hurtful, but not realizing the damage that they're doing. And every character, I think, does it in some way. So I think it was a great equalizer in that way. So yeah, it's a really fascinating movie. It's very short. It's 90 minutes. If you get the chance to see it, I'd really recommend it.
That one is also
one of the best Christmas movies in years, I'd say. Maybe since Tokyo Godfathers.
It's a lot like Tokyo Godfathers.
Yeah. So that's my number 3, Tangerine.
I'm glad to see that on your list. That is also on my list of movies to see. I've not had the opportunities to see it yet, but I do plan on it. Okay, my number 3 is a movie that no one knows, no one heard of, no one saw it. It's Inside Out, from a little independent studio called Pixar, which I hope will go on to do great things. No, I'm kidding. Everyone saw Inside Out. Everyone knows who Pixar is. Inside Out is, I think, without a doubt, I mean, this is the part of my list where I'm just repeating what everyone else has said. It's the best Pixar movie since Up. It is, but I also think it's one of the, I think it was one of the smartest movies that came out this year in terms of how it took a lot of really very heavy emotional and psychological topics about emotional maturity, about growing up, and about the need to have a balance between positivity and negativity, or what we see as positivity and negativity in one's life, and how, it's not rational, it's not reasonable, and it's not healthy to just want everything to be joy and sunshine all the time, because it's about a girl whose life is uprooted when her family moves to San Francisco, and we see her experience in dealing with this through her 5 core emotions. Specifically joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust, with the main focus of the story being on joy and sadness. Because for most of the girl's life, joy has kind of been at the helm, but now that things are really getting shaken up, she needs to accept that, joy has to accept that sadness needs to play a part in Ridley's development as well. So it tackles a lot of complex issues about depression, about moving, about changes in your life, and about what it means to continue to be yourself, but also to accept changes as an inevitable and necessary part of life. But does it in a way that's very bright, that's very colorful, that's fun, and that's also just incredibly funny. I mean, along with Spy and Chirac and The Big Short, this was also just one of the funniest movies of the year. Again, in true Pixar fashion, when they go for the comedy, it's really, really good comedy. The voice acting is phenomenal. The animation is gorgeous. And the soundtrack is pretty fantastic as well. So it was a pretty easy pick for a top 5 spot on my list.
Excellent. Well, my number 2 is yet another film we've never heard of, and it's called Inside Out. It's
Who?
Yeah.
Where? When?
This it's not surprising to me that it's as good as it is. I think you've said a ton of what you said so many great things about it already, Noah. So I won't talk too long, too much more about it. But I think it's great that Pete Docter is responsible for this. I believe he's also credited with a co-director, Ronaldo del Carmen, who is also, I think, credited on the story.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the same guy who directed Up, so it's definitely, he has a great pedigree. And I think one of the it's really, I've seen it. I saw it twice in the theaters again because I was seeing it with somebody, and I liked it even better the second time. It is very emotionally affecting, as you might imagine. But I felt like the emotions were very well earned. I didn't feel manipulated because I can name other movies that came out this year where I sensed that manipulation. I didn't feel that here. And I also just love the depiction of Joy in this movie as almost a crazy person. Like the fact, like almost like this desperate, like trying like desperately to hold on to happiness.
Yeah.
And I love how the film carries that through, so that for kids, I don't think they notice it immediately, but I know when I first watched it, I'm like, oh, Joy is like has no perspective on this at all.
Yeah.
And so it feels very well earned when sadness takes her place at the helm along with Joy to help Riley deal with this totally new and very difficult situation. And it also has just some of the most enduring images from this last year for me. There's one scene where the one scene that really sticks with me is a very low point in the movie where Joy basically breaks down and starts crying. So just imagining, like, just seeing like the emotion that represents everything happy, everything good, crying. And specifically what they have her do, and this is partially due to the animation, is she's cradling a memory, and she cradles it so hard that it actually drops out of her arms, and you just see her sobbing and holding herself.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, like, the memory has gone, and all she has is herself. And it's just this really searing image. And man, I like that is like one of those moments where I was like, yeah, this is why Pixar is so good. This is what makes them, to me, still the best digital animation studio. And it's a shame. Like, I did see The Good Dinosaur. It was nowhere near as good as Inside Out. That was a little bit disappointing. But I really hope we can see some more of this magic in this year when Finding Dory comes out. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. So,
oh boy.
Inside Out, my number 2. Just, another great film for Pixar.
All right. Well, my number 2 is yet another one of the multiple Oscar nominees. It is an adaptation from a book directed by John Crawley. This is Brooklyn, which, similar to Inside Out, is really a movie about how to deal with change in life. It is the story of an Irish girl who lives in the 1950s, but Ireland is not a growing country at this time. The town where she lives is just a nothing little town where nothing happens. And her mother and older sister realize, like, this is not the life you should have. Here's the little bit of money we could save. We have contact with an Irish priest in Brooklyn, and he's arranged a job for you. So we're sending you to America for a new life, a new future, and just go make your fortune elsewhere. So, and that's really all the movie is. It's mostly her simply trying to adapt to a new country, new culture, new customs, and feeling in a very painful way the separation from her life as it was before. And it just shows her coming to terms with that and still finding her way and starting to create a life for herself and even finding love until a family crisis calls her back to Ireland briefly. And at that point, she then basically has a choice where she realizes, okay, I know what my life could be in Brooklyn, but I've always known my life could be in Ireland. And she still feels the pull of Ireland and of what her of the idea of being able to go back to her old life and have that, and have things basically be the way they were, and with an opportunity there for love as well. And she basically has to make a choice, and she's confronted with the reality of every now and then you come to a certain point in life where you have two or more ways that are equally open to you, but you have to pick one. And once you pick that way, the other ways are really kind of closed. Not that you can't have other stuff in life or that you can't change direction again, but you go down the one path, and in order to go down that path, there are other paths you can never go down. And you'll have to spend your life knowing, okay, if I'd done that, things would be different, but you'll never know how different. You'll never know if they'd be better or worse. And the ending is the decision and what her decision is, which again, I won't spoil, because I think this is it's one of the best movies of the year that everyone should see. But it's a movie that, especially given my circumstance of an American who's been living in Germany for a few years, I really, really got every bit of the emotional struggle that she goes through. And what gives the movie its power is, first off, there's no attempt to view the 1950s through modern eyes. It presents Eilish, the main character, and all of the people and situations she encounters very straightforward, and in very here's the world as it was then, and this is how this one very imperfect person came to terms with it. So it feels very real in that sense, but also its emotional power, especially at the end. No film this year made me cry harder than this movie, with all due respect to Inside Out, which did have me tearing up. It fully embraces the importance of having to decide in that final moment. It fully acknowledges the pain of it and the struggle that is necessary to make such a decision. And it doesn't varnish it. It doesn't sugarcoat it. But it still acknowledges that there's a good and bad side to everything. And it fully embraces that. And it really deeply, deeply emotionally affected me. And it's also the fourth movie that I've mentioned now that had Domhnall Gleeson in it. So he is officially the most represented actor in my honorable mentions and top 10 list this year. That's 4 movies of his, that all of which I really liked. Star Wars, The Revenant.
Oh, The Revenant.
Star Wars, The Revenant, Ex Machina, and this movie.
Yeah. Quite a year.
Yep. Also, Saoirse Ronan should win the Oscar for Best Actress, but she won't.
What's the
Saoirse? Sorry.
The other actor in Ex Machina. I want to see more of him. I forget.
Oscar Isaac.
Oscar Isaac. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could give you a list of movies.
Yes.
Yes, I love him.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we're at number 1. At least for now. This has been my number 1 since I first saw it. And it's a film, again, that I don't know if a lot of people have seen. I will try to champion this movie as much as I can. It's called Get, The Trial of Vivian Amsalem. Ooh. It is from brother and sister directors, Ronit Elkovitz and Shlomi Elkovitz. And Ronit actually stars in the film as Vivian Amsalem. She also, the two siblings also co-wrote the movie together. So it really is like it really did take on quite a few roles here. And if you were to tell me like that I was going to enjoy like a courtroom drama that was mostly set in that courtroom, that was mostly about a divorce, if you told me like that was going to be one of my favorite movies of the year at the beginning of 2015, I would be like, no way, there's no way. But what this film does so well is that it deals with the absurdities of the legal system, and in this process of Vivian trying to achieve this divorce from her husband. In order to be recognized, she has to get a religious divorce from her husband, and it's something that her husband just seems like is basically like playing with her. Like, he agrees to show up at these divorce proceedings, and then will say like, "Oh, actually, I'm not feeling it today." And the judge will be like, "What are you talking about? Like, you're stringing us along. Like, we can't do any more of these appearances." And it's all dependent on her husband. So Vivian is just kind of there, like, trying to deal with this absurdity, but she doesn't really have a say in the matter. Like, it's ultimately your husband who grant her the divorce. And what's interesting about this film, though, is that they're not. You get little snippets of what their marriage was like, but you never get the whole picture. And I think what makes the film so good to me is that it deals in multiple perspectives and gives us so many just unforgettable characters. Both Vivian is really interesting, but her husband, who is like almost comically stoic, who just kind of like looks at her like you can't tell if he's judging her, if he's just looking at her totally apathetically during the courtroom proceedings. Each of the two lawyers for the two spouses are both like very unique and almost like are extensions of their clients who they represent. And also the judges, who are just really funny by really trying to strictly adhere to these old to these laws that they don't. It doesn't seem like they're trying to enforce, but they might not be able to really like explain why they're there.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think it deals in multiple perspectives, and even though it is set in a courtroom, it's not like one static shot. They do really interesting things with the camera in this movie, and I think it makes it dynamic. It's also really funny. You'll have like a person giving testimony, and they'll be completely reserved and polite, and then you have the next person just talk like there's a woman who I believe is supposed to be Vivian's sister, who is just talking about how terrible her husband is and going on, and eventually like, the judge is like, "Okay, like we get it, like we get where you're going with this," and she just keeps going until she's actually removed from the courtroom. So there's a lot of absurdity and hilarious moments in this movie, and I think by the end, when there is some kind of resolution, I won't say what happens, but it just, I think, is like the cherry on top of this really absurd Sunday. It's the kind of movie that again didn't get a lot of attention. I think it may have been, I want to say it may have been selected as Israel's 2014 foreign language film, because the entire thing is in Hebrew, but it just has really stayed with me, and I think is just it sounds like, I feel like it's the kind of film that it's really hard to convince people to see, but once they see it, they're in it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's currently my number one. I really recommend that one. It's called Get: The Trial of Vivian Amsel.
Nice. Very nice.
Your number one.
On to my number one. Surprise, surprise, shock and on surprise. My favorite film of the year is Mad Max Fury Road. Hands down, for going off of what you said, Justin, you used the exact same word that I've used to describe this movie. It's a relief almost. It's a refreshing delight to see a movie that is so visual and how it presents itself in its world. Within the first 10 minutes, basically, you know everything you need to know without the teensiest bit of exposition. Just even as I was watching the film the first time, I was like, oh my God, I'm getting everything. And they're not telling me, they're just showing it all. It's not as funny as a lot of the other movies that I've mentioned on this list, that other movies that came out, but it has this sense of fun, even a sense of silliness almost, in a lot of its goofier moments. But it's also such a it's just such a joy to watch, because it's like the movie's having fun with itself, and with how hilariously impractical a lot of the things are that people seem to have in this world. For weapons, the fact that their cars are all mashups, like a 5-year-old's mashups of different cars out of the toy box. It's like playground logic run amok almost, which is kind of the point. It's also it's one of the few action movies. I mean, this is always kind of rare. It's one of those few movies that not only works spectacularly well as an incredibly well-made, incredibly exhilarating action movie, there's also an intelligence to it and a maturity to it, despite the outlandishness of all of its appearances. I mean, this is a movie with a guy wearing the skin of his mother's face and playing a flamethrowing guitar, for fuck's sake. But there's an intelligence and a maturity in how it sets up the dynamics, not only of the characters, but also the gender of the characters as well. There is a lot of symbolism and meaning in the fact that Furiosa, for all of her, hard, scrabble, muscular appearance, she is a woman, and she does what she does for these women that have been trapped by this warlord, and are basically forced to be raped by him repeatedly. And she finally stands up and says, "No, this can't stand. This is wrong. Maybe we no longer live in a world with rules and with civilization, but this is still wrong." She's the one driving the plot. She's, I think, the most badass and the most kick-ass character in the film. And it was also refreshing in that sense, because we've seen so much stuff recently about how there's still this mindset in the film industry of movies, especially this kind of fantastical or dystopian sci-fi or action movie, how they have to be male driven, or quote unquote, people aren't going to be interested and they're not going to work and they're not going to be financially successful. Not only is this a great film, it also made a great profit at the box office. I think a big reason for that was Furiosa was such an interesting and fun and well-rounded character, and how she was filmed, how she was written, and in Charlize Theron's performance, and that despite its appearance, that gives the film a maturity and intelligence that a lot of action movies fail to achieve. Even movies that work on the spectacle side of being action movies, and on top of that, in addition to some of the other movies on this list, like Chirac, it was one of the most quotable movies of the year, and that counts for a lot in my book. I still have the urge to scream "Witness me" whenever I try to beat the red light when I'm driving.
Oh, that's where that's from. I had no idea what you were referencing.
I don't think the film gets enough credit for the dialogue, because there is, I guess you'd say, little dialogue, but what's there is like really good. Like, it's very quotable.
When the characters speak, they make it count. So there's not much more I can say about it without repeating myself. I wouldn't necessarily argue it was the objectively best film of the year. I can certainly understand people picking other movies over for their number one film of the year, but for me, there was no other movie that I enjoyed so much on a cinematic level, and where I felt there was enough thematic depth to it, where thinking about it afterwards, the film only appreciated.
Yeah.
Whereas most movies I can at least enjoy, but they'll often depreciate in my mind the more I think about them. Mad Max is one of those rare movies where every time I think about it, I only felt better about it, and I only thought higher of it. Yep.
All right, so that was our top 10 movies of 2015. Or
Casey, what's your favorite movie?
Well, I don't want to get into that here. I think I've seen one movie that was on both of your lists.
Which one?
Ex Machina.
Really?
Yeah. And so if any of our listeners haven't seen most of the movies, that's fine. You have time. Now you know what you should see based on our recommendations. And you guys did a great job selling these movies. I was listening to some of your descriptions, and I'm like, wow, I really need to see these movies. And that's something I ask myself a lot. I'm like, I like a good movie is a great hour and a half because you get to see a new story, you get to learn about new characters and new places, and feel new feelings that you may not have felt before or in that light. And I wonder, and then I think to myself, why can't I carve out some time for movies? And then I realize why, because I spend all my time watching television shows, which I think personally works better for the type of stories I like than it's a better medium for the type of stories I like, not objectively better medium. And I think it's getting even better and closer to it, if it isn't already on the same level as movies. They've moved over the years. They've moved from episodic type shows like CIS or any sitcom to more serialized dramas like Game of Thrones or
well, and visually to looking more cinematic.
Right. And so to that degree, I want to put out my favorite show of 2015, and that's a show called River. It's a miniseries, a 6-episode miniseries put out from BBC, and it's about a police detective with a very fragile mind. He sees dead people in a not exactly like you see dead people in the Sixth Sense, but he's haunted by memories of these people and figmentations of his imagination of how he might understand them based on his investigations. And they talk to him and they judge him and they make fun of him. And in addition to those characters, he also has a manifestation of his demons. And in the show, it's God. What the hell was his name? Hold on. Thomas Cream was an old, like 1850s serial killer in London, and you witness the main character played by what was his name? Stellan Skarsgård. You see them bantering back and forth, and him trying to resist his demons. And the demon making very strong cases, and he wanting to get, and Stellan's character wanting to give in. And there's this one scene, probably somewhere in the middle of the show, where he finally does give in to that darker side, and he hurls this chair through a crowd, like terrorizing this supportive community that he was going to see to get help for his condition. And it really is a magnificent performance about magnificently flawed man struggling to be a human being. Very deep, very raw emotions. The full range, this full spectrum of human emotion and relationships and strained relationships and new relationships and old relationships and all that fun stuff. I cannot I cannot sell this show as well as, one of you might be able to, but I definitely highly recommend it. It's only 6 episodes. It is on Netflix. I just looked it up. It's still on Netflix. Definitely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Well, did we want to give any closing thoughts on the year, or?
Sure. Yeah. What do you guys think this year compared to other years? I don't, not the best year I think, but it's definitely was a good year.
Well, I every year I think there are more than enough great movies to, for it to be hard in a good sense to make a list like this one, where there's so many good movies. It was hard for me to suss out my 10 favorites, but once I did, these are movies that I feel really good about having on this list. Because the movies that I just felt good about in general, that that felt good to be able to see them, and to say that I've seen them. So all I can say is 2016, more please. Especially in the realm of action movies, please.
Yeah.
More Furiosas, more Rays.
Yeah.
For God's sake, please.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I feel like the last 2 years, I really maybe obsessively so. I really committed to watching a lot of films from that year, and not just the blockbusters. Though I've really tried to make time for those as well, but try to find like the independent films and the foreign films that maybe aren't getting as much attention, but are getting like they're getting like a good amount of acclaim from critics. I guess tend to trust critics, even if I don't always agree with them. And I guess I don't know if it's because I see a lot of movies where sometimes I'll be like, like this. I feel like there isn't a movie like this other movie from this past year, so this year doesn't seem as good to me. But I think it is just kind of relative and subjective. I mean, when I like sat down to make this list, I was like, wow, there were a lot of great movies from this past year, and they were great in different ways, which made it hard to rank them. And that's why I see top 10 lists as totally subjective. I mean, opinions about anything, I mean, it should be taken for granted that it's subjective. But yeah, I think 2016, honestly, I might be looking forward to more than I was looking forward to 2015. Partially because some movies that were supposed to come out last year are not going to be coming out this year. They've moved a lot in that way. There's like a new Terrence Malick movie. There's next weekend, Hail Caesar, the new Coen Brothers movie, is opening.
Oh God, yes!
I am so excited for that. There's there's a bunch of other. There's like a new. It's a movie from a director named Jeff Nichols, who I really like a lot. Who did a film called Mud, which starred Matthew McConaughey in I think his best role. And he has like his new film is called Green Room, and it's about a punk band who is like accidentally witnesses a crime committed by skinheads, and the leader of those skinheads is played by Patrick Stewart.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and there was like they released like a teaser trailer, and most of it is Patrick Stewart, like just Patrick Stewart's voiceover, and it is scary as all hell, in my opinion. It's great. I cannot wait for that.
Plus, then you have a lot of blockbusters coming out as always this year. X-Men Apocalypse,
I really
that Batman versus Superman film.
Even though we already know exactly what's going to happen.
Civil War. Oh yeah, that second trailer was terrible.
Like, doesn't Suicide Squad look so much better than Batman?
Oh my God! Yes.
I mean, I've only seen trailers, but I've seen like I was skeptical about Suicide Squad, and then I saw the trailer.
Last trailer
it looks pretty good.
Yes.
Whereas like the Batman versus Superman.
I agree. The second trailer for I mean, I liked the first trailer for Batman vs Superman because it was like, this is gonna be mind blowing. But then the second one, as Noah said, it just like gave the entire movie away.
It's like,
I don't need to see the movie anymore. Plot. Yeah.
But
with Suicide Squad, we still have that. We're like, this is gonna be a fun ride.
Yeah.
Type mystery.
Well, we don't know exactly what the world is or what's going on. That's all up in the air.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. But all right, so any other thoughts? 26, 24, 20, what the hell year was it? 2015? 2016 will be the next year.
Come at me, 2016. Come at me, bro.
So we haven't put out the animation thing yet, have we?
Not yet.
Oh no, that's coming up.
All right, so stay tuned, our listeners. We're gonna have a mini-series on the best
alternative animation.
Thank you. I was blanking on what it was called. Yes, and some of the best movies I saw this year actually were films I saw during that miniseries.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. So thanks, Noah, for that list. So stay tuned. Listen to that. We may put one thing out before then, but if not, that'll be the next thing you see. As always, like us, subscribe, favorite us.
Like us.
Please like us. We like to be liked.
Us.
And stay tuned. We'll be back again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Yay.